Hello everyone, welcome to the Tim Booker channel. Wishing you all an enjoyable listening experience. Today, I'll be discussing a book by American financial journalist Tim Fernholz titled Rocket Billionaires, with the subtitle Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and the New Space Race. This book spans over 300 pages and delves into the question of who the rocket billionaires are, Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. Initially not known for their ventures in space, these two American entrepreneurs shifted their focus to the space industry at the start of the 21st century. In just over 20 years, they made remarkable strides in the highly specialized field of rocketry. Fernholz argues that the 21st century space race no longer revolves solely around governments and traditional aerospace giants but increasingly spotlights the value of innovative startups. For enthusiasts of hard tech, it's common knowledge that in today's global aerospace market, the United States and China reign as the undeniable duopoly. In 2022, the US completed 87 rocket launches, while China completed 64, together accounting for 81% of global launches. However, the top rocket manufacturers in the US and China differ significantly. Among China's 64 rocket launches, 53 belonged to the renowned Long March series developed by the China Aerospace Science and Technology Corporation. Contrastingly, out of the 87 rocket launches in the US, 61 were Musk's Falcon series and 4 were Bezos's New Shepard series. Surprisingly, even NASA, representing government-funded research, only launched one rocket in an entire year and often outsources space operations to Musk. Emerging forces showcased their prowess while established players gradually found themselves marginalized. The current state of the U.S. aerospace market not only differs markedly from China but has also undergone a seismic shift from its own historical dominance. During the Cold War era, NASA reigned supreme globally in the aerospace industry. Iconic projects like the Apollo moon landings and space shuttles were spearheaded by NASA. It collaborated with military-industrial giants like Boeing and Lockheed Martin to manufacture launch vehicles, a model that formed the bedrock of the U.S. space industry, a model led by government initiatives and executed by defense contractors. However, by the early 1990s, 85% of the U.S. rocket launch market was still dominated by NASA and defense contractors. Why did the landscape change so dramatically after 30 years? To answer this question, Fernholz personally visited Musk and Bezos's rocket development teams and engaged in direct dialogue with Musk himself. He discovered that the success of these rocket billionaires wasn't solely due to greater funding or more advanced technology. Their true advantage lay in understanding the intrinsic logic of commercial spaceflight, mastering cost control, and developing markets to an extreme degree. Their ultimate success, therefore, was a natural outcome of market selection. By 2023, Musk's rocket company had surpassed a valuation of $130 billion, and its core business was gradually turning profitable. Similarly, Bezos's company planned to launch its next-generation rocket in 2024. The success of these two rocket billionaires attracted more innovative companies, including private enterprises from China, into the commercial spaceflight market. This illustrates that even in fields seemingly high in barriers and low in participants, opportunities abound for new companies. If you're an entrepreneur seeking achievement in a market with vast prospects but high short-term risks, Rocket Billionaires is sure to provide inspiration. After all, behind high risk often lies the potential for high returns. The author of this book, Tim Fernholz, is a seasoned journalist with Quartz, a U.S. business news website, reporting on the aerospace industry for over a decade. He maintains close ties with Musk's rocket development team and possesses comprehensive knowledge of the global aerospace market. Therefore, immediately after its English version publication in 2018, the book received strong endorsements from The New York Times and Forbes magazine. Walter Isaacson, author of Steve Jobs, remarked, Fernholz's book truly elucidates why NASA's old model failed and why Musk and Bezos succeeded. It's certain this book will offer abundant insights. Next, I'll split the discussion into two parts to introduce the main content of this book. Firstly, let's explore how Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, who entered the space industry unexpectedly, swiftly established themselves in the commercial spaceflight market. In the second part, I'll demonstrate the unique techniques employed by Musk and Bezos in attracting investments. Lastly, I'll summarize how the success of the rocket billionaires can inspire our daily entrepreneurial activities and project management. Part 1. Firstly, let me pose a question to you. Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos both profited from the 1990s American internet boom. So, why did they choose to venture into the aerospace market in the early 21st century and restart their businesses in an unfamiliar field? The answer to this question is related to the American public's space dreams. Musk and Bezos, one from the 70s and the other from the 60s, experienced their adolescence during the first peak period of the American aerospace industry. Events like lunar explorations, space shuttle launches, and the launch of the Hubble telescope occurred every few years during their teenage years. Musk and Bezos were attracted to these achievements in aerospace, planting the seeds of their space dreams. When they struck gold in the internet industry, achieving financial freedom, naturally, they began contemplating their dreams from their youth. In 2000, Bezos took the lead by founding his aerospace technology company in Washington state, naming it Blue Origin. In 2002, Musk's Space Exploration Technologies Corporation was also established in California. This company's abbreviated name is quite catchy, SpaceX. With the companies established, what specific business were these two billionaires eyeing? Both of them set their sights on launch rockets. Whether it's astronauts, satellites, or research equipment, they all need rockets as launch tools to escape Earth's gravity and enter space. Even our familiar spacecraft first launches into near-Earth orbit with a rocket before initiating its own engine flight. In the aerospace field, rockets are the most essential and the market is exceedingly vast. However, despite this high-demand industry, the aerospace market in the early 21st century America was in a dire state. At that time, there were only 4 defense giants in the United States capable of producing large and medium-sized rockets and providing launch services. Their single launch costs were 50% higher than those in China and Russia. Moreover, apart from orders from NASA and the military, American rocket manufacturing companies had almost no other income. Why did such a strange disparity occur? The answer lies in the former glory of the American aerospace industry. As mentioned earlier, the American aerospace industry, especially NASA, emerged during the Cold War period. Its initial drive was not commercial interest but rather military and national competition. The renowned Apollo lunar landing program was a national image project for the United States. In a bid to send astronauts to the moon before their rival, the Soviet Union, NASA scarcely considered the research and manufacturing costs of space equipment. A former NASA engineer told Fernholz, the author of this book, that NASA's culture was to spend $100 million to make a product that scored 80 out of 100, then continue to pour money into it until it was psychologically satisfying. Due to diminishing marginal utility, the final product achieved only a 10% improvement in performance while costing 3 to 5 times more. It was precisely due to this spendthrift habit that the space launch vehicles developed by NASA during its golden age were often known for their extravagance. For instance, the spacecraft used for lunar missions were launched using a rocket called the Saturn V. This rocket was taller than the Statue of Liberty, and the cost of each was equivalent to 1/3 of an aircraft carrier. With only 18 Saturn V rockets produced in total, they cost the United States 1% of its GDP, an astronomical figure. Following the Saturn V, NASA developed the Space Shuttle intending to replace rockets with this reusable platform. However, the Space Shuttle was a very fragile device, requiring 1.2 million checks and repairs every time it was used, taking at least 3 to 4 months. In popular terms, it was like talking for 5 minutes, charging for 2 hours. As a result, the United States only produced 5 space shuttles, completing 135 launches in 31 years. Each launch cost $1.5 billion, and due to accidents, 2 shuttles were lost. You might have noticed by now, NASA's approach to developing space launch tools was entirely technology-driven. As long as it maintained technological leadership, it could tolerate the high trial and error costs and was not very sensitive to operational expenses. While this approach might have been suitable for the defense sector, it discouraged clients in the commercial aerospace market. Since the 1980s, global aerospace activities had shifted focus from defense and pure research to launching commercial satellites. Satellites were used for broadcasting, television, maritime communication, and their demand was continuously increasing. However, in this emerging field, NASA's large and expensive launch tools were simply not competitive. American telecommunication companies preferred to rent Russian and European rockets to launch satellites rather than pay the exorbitant $1.5 billion cost per launch for the Space Shuttle. By 2011, even NASA itself couldn't bear the burden anymore and decided to retire all space shuttles. NASA's failure marked the first step toward the decline of American commercial aerospace. The next players on the scene were the well-established defense corporations. In the 1990s, Boeing and Lockheed Martin, these two defense giants, temporarily became the main players in the American space launch market. They developed platforms not with space shuttles but with heavy rockets. These rockets were developed based on intercontinental ballistic missile technology from the Cold War period, which was mature in terms of technology and had acceptable prices. Relying on these rockets, Boeing and Lockheed simultaneously took on government orders while acting as brokers for various international customers, flourishing in their business. However, by 2006, the U.S. government proposed that Boeing and Lockheed form a joint venture specifically to provide aerospace launch services for the military and NASA. Strict confidentiality agreements were also established. This joint venture called ULA did have plenty of orders, but its path to commercialization was completely blocked. According to the confidentiality agreement, even if ULA was launching satellites for American companies, it needed government approval, a cumbersome process. Consequently, American companies hastened their move abroad, completely abandoning ULA. Additionally, rocket launch orders from the U.S. military and NASA were paid per launch, with varying numbers from year to year. From 2006 to 2022, only 155 such launch contracts were signed, averaging just 9 rockets per year. To sustain their massive manpower and research expenses, Boeing and Lockheed had to raise prices continually for government orders. Consequently, the cost of launching a rocket by ULA surged to $400 million, making it even more unlikely to attract regular clients. Musk derisively told Fernholz, "It's the first time I've heard that there's a rocket in the world that costs $400 million to build. That's more than 5 times the normal cost." Because of the lessons learned from NASA and ULA, when Musk and Bezos ventured into rocket development, they were determined not to blindly chase new technologies and not to entrust absolute authority to the government. Their approach was to understand the logic of the commercial aerospace market and use that logic to guide their development. And the key to winning in commercial aerospace was actually 2 words: cost and cycle. The lower the cost of rocket development and production, the more favorable the offer to customers. Favorable pricing can continuously attract customers, thereby increasing the number of orders for the same rocket, further reducing production costs. Additionally, after signing contracts, aerospace clients didn't want to wait endlessly. They hoped rockets would launch within the agreed-upon time windows, not needing the latest technology but requiring stability. This meant the company needed to control the development cycle of the products, ensuring a few key, flagship, products steadily provided launch services for customers. Within Blue Origin and SpaceX, Bezos' business strategy was one of accumulation before eruption. He spent more than a decade developing reliable rocket engines, only starting to show progress around 2012. In contrast, Musk's SpaceX frequently appeared in newspapers and websites from day one, making a highly noticeable entrance. This flamboyance was actually a result of circumstances. During SpaceX's early days, Musk couldn't secure external investments. The entire budget for the company was the $100 million he took out of his own pocket. This money was only enough to endure 3 launch failures. If the company couldn't attract commercial orders or investors before exhausting the $100 million, it would have gone bankrupt. Therefore, Musk made 2 significant decisions. He pushed for extreme cost control and compressed the productization cycle to the shortest possible duration. The first step in cost control was establishing a new structure for the rockets. Speaking of this issue involves the technological characteristics of launch rockets. Mainstream commercial rockets typically feature 2 stages. The actual entity responsible for delivering spacecraft or satellites into orbit is the topmost stage. The lower stage's primary function is propulsion. It boosts the upper body to an altitude tens of kilometers above the ground and then automatically falls away, carrying the engines and fuel tanks into the ocean. In other words, the lower stage of the rocket is a disposable commodity, discarded after use. The reason why launching rockets is excessively expensive mainly revolves around this disposable first stage. The issue was that before the first stage rocket fell into the sea, its engines had operated for only a few minutes, and its structure remained intact. If it could be recovered and reused, wouldn't costs decrease? At this moment, Musk had a sudden inspiration. He devised a new plan. After the first stage rocket fell away, instead of directly plummeting into the sea, it would ignite multiple times, adjusting its descent posture, finally dropping vertically into a designated area. Consequently, this segment of the rocket, particularly the engines on top, could be recovered and reused. According to Musk's calculations, if the first stage rocket could be reused 10 times, the cost of each launch would decrease by 80% compared to traditional rockets. Therefore, all rockets developed by SpaceX adopted this special reusable structure. To realize the new functionality in design, there had to be a team of professionals. Fernholz describes Musk as a latecomer to rocket engineering, and ironically, he detested those who were too similar to him. Understandably, rocket enthusiasts constitute a vast group in the United States. There are thousands of startup aerospace companies in Florida alone. Each company's boss is a determined dreamer, believing they have unparalleled and exceptional ideas. Initially, Musk interacted with a batch of such entrepreneurs but discovered their weak product awareness and complete insensitivity to costs. Consequently, he quickly abandoned them. Ultimately, the development talent recruited by SpaceX consisted of a group that had worked in traditional aerospace companies yet hadn't succumbed to the big company syndrome. The company's second-in-command, COO Shotwell, had over a decade of experience in defense enterprises, familiar with the entire space industry chain. Chief Engineer Koenigsmann was an authority in aerospace electronics. Musk himself was the CEO of the company. He didn't need employees to provide him with ideas but rather to transform formed ideas into visible products. Fernholz describes SpaceX's rocket development as following an agile process. Each research department would set short-term goals, demonstrate and review them after completion, instead of waiting for other upstream or downstream departments, effectively shortening the development cycle. Moreover, Musk proposed the concept of testing during launch. In other words, instead of waiting until the rocket was perfected before launching it into orbit, they'd launch an 80% ready product and gather experience from the actual launch. This approach was starkly different from NASA's excessive perfectionism. However, the most revolutionary move by SpaceX was its vertical integration of the aerospace supply chain. In simple terms, this company would directly develop and produce most of the rocket's components, minimizing outsourcing. The subsequent testing and launch services were also handled in-house. SpaceX's COO Shotwell told the author of this book that traditional defense giants relied heavily on subcontractors when building rockets. Even a simple component required bidding, and delivery times were entirely delayed. Ordering a valve could take up to 18 months to receive the finished product, causing progress delays. In contrast, SpaceX took a different approach, not only manufacturing the engines themselves but also developing valves and rivets. While this practice might not be cost-effective in simple industrial products, it significantly controlled budgets in the extremely precise and complex system of rockets, where the demand for small components was considerable. In 2005, just 3 years after SpaceX was formally established, Musk's first rocket, Falcon 1, was born. It was a relatively lightweight two-stage rocket. Its first stage housed the Merlin series of engines developed by SpaceX itself, with potential upgrades to larger rockets in the future. However, the first 3 launches of Falcon 1 encountered technical failures. At this point, Musk's $100 million startup capital was nearly depleted. It was at this critical juncture that NASA extended a helping hand, upon hearing that the single launch cost of Falcon 1 was only $7 million, a third lower than the cheapest traditional rocket in the United States. Such a price was incredibly tempting. Faced with this enticing offer, in 2006, NASA signed the first commissioned launch contract with SpaceX, valued at nearly $400 million. Musk's company survived the most challenging phase, and his space entrepreneurship gradually gained traction. Part 2. Here's the translation of the provided text. Here is the record from the book Rocket Billionaires, depicting the founding of new rocket enterprises by Musk and Bezos. By 2023, SpaceX, led by Musk, has undergone 46 rounds of financing, securing over $13 billion in external funds, and the company's valuation has surpassed $130 billion. Though Bezos' Blue Origin is smaller in scale, they secured NASA's lunar project orders with their heavy rockets and lunar rovers. But the substantial investments weren't solely due to the company's strong product prowess and effective cost control. There are some special marketing techniques at play here. Do you remember the space tourism fever that swept through Western countries a dozen years ago? American celebrities like Tom Hanks and Angelina Jolie spent hundreds of thousands of dollars booking tickets for spaceships, planning to check in at altitudes over 100 kilometers above Earth. However, most of these trips never materialized. Nevertheless, the concept of space tourism gained traction. The person who invented this space tourism gimmick was Richard Branson, a British business magnate. Branson had a fervent passion for aviation. He first established an airline company and then founded his aerospace enterprise, Virgin Galactic. The secret weapon of Virgin Galactic was a rocket-powered aircraft. It could take 6 passengers to an altitude of 110 kilometers, allowing them to glide for a few minutes in that high space. Branson actively marketed this spectacle like space tourism. Don't underestimate this gimmick. Fernholz, the author, describes Branson as a marketing genius. It was due to his continuous global promotion of space tourism for over a decade that the capital markets developed a strong interest in the prospects of commercial space ventures. Musk and Bezos, these two rocket billionaires, were influenced by Branson. For example, Musk's frequently mentioned Mars colonization, a catchy yet distant from reality gimmick, mimicked Branson's marketing model. As for Bezos, he outright copied Branson's homework. In 2021, right after Blue Origin launched its first carrier rocket, Bezos challenged Tom Hanks, saying, "Cancel your tickets with Branson. Come aboard my rocket and spend 12 real minutes in space." Hanks straightforwardly declined because Bezos priced the seats on his rocket at $28 million, which was too steep. Of course, gimmicks are just gimmicks. Worldwide, the number of people who can afford the high cost of space travel and dare to venture on rockets and spacecraft remains exceedingly low. Expecting them to sustain an industry in the short term is practically impossible. Branson's Virgin Galactic company didn't send its first space tourism flight until 2021, with all 6 passengers being its own employees. Musk and Bezos didn't make private space travel their real business focus either. However, the attention-grabbing techniques Branson used were learned by the two rocket billionaires. Musk's performance in this regard was particularly typical. In 2014, just after SpaceX launched the Falcon 9 version 2 rocket, Musk openly sued the U.S. Air Force, claiming that their orders placed under ULA were unfair competition. As mentioned earlier, ULA, a joint venture formed by military-industrial giants, primarily fed on orders from the U.S. government and the military. Despite Boeing and Lockheed's influence in the defense system, ULA's services, although expensive, could still secure new contracts. Although SpaceX became an important launch service provider for NASA starting in 2006, it couldn't break into the U.S. defense aerospace market. To change this, Musk resorted to litigation as a marketing strategy. He publicly stated, "The Air Force pays $400 million for rocket launch services from ULA, while my Falcon 9 only costs $50 million. Actually, the so-called $50 million was Musk's exaggeration. The actual launch quote for the Falcon 9 rocket was $65 million. However, this highly publicized lawsuit show quickly attracted attention across America, putting tremendous public pressure on the military. To ease tensions, the U.S. Air Force was forced to announce that in the next round of satellite launch tenders, SpaceX and other private companies were eligible to participate. Consequently, SpaceX secured the launch order for the U.S. military's third-generation GPS satellite in 2016. The high-profile court case eventually petered out. While collaborating with the military, SpaceX also refused to accept additional secrecy agreements. This meant that aside from participating in defense launches, the Falcon 9 rocket could still continue to take commercial orders worldwide. It's worth noting that Musk's lawsuit show had the effect of blooming inside the wall, yet spreading fragrance outside. Before 2014, the capital markets were cautious about investing in aerospace companies. On average, the space projects attracted less than $900 million in external funds each year. But after Musk sued the U.S. Air Force, financiers suddenly noticed, there's a company in the United States capable of competing head-to-head with old-school military-industrial giants. Although its product line was thin, precise cost control allowed it to provide high-quality rocket launch services for less than half the market price. The big shuffle in the commercial space market began this way. In December 2015, SpaceX secured a $1 billion investment from Google and Fidelity Investments. Most of this money went into the development of the upgraded version of Falcon 9, the Falcon Heavy rocket. The investors' favor and the endorsement of defense orders further encouraged Musk to step out of the United States and compete for orders from the European aerospace giant, Arianespace. By 2018, SpaceX had garnered 65% of the world's new rocket launch contracts, truly becoming a space giant. However, Musk's promotional tactics go beyond lawsuits. Fernholz notes that at SpaceX, even rocket launch failures can be turned into a brilliant public relations show. This is entirely different from NASA's situation. NASA, funded by the U.S. government, faces questioning from Congress and the entire public whenever there's a space mishap. However, Musk faces investors and customers. He openly discloses investigation results and firmly states that although a part of the rocket malfunctioned and failed to launch successfully, other components functioned normally. This implies that SpaceX still made technological progress. The lessons learned from failure, once summarized and refined, become a guarantee of future success. That's why, from the initial Falcon 1 launch that faced numerous accidents, SpaceX didn't scare away investors. Instead, it created a unique failure-success culture unimaginable in traditional aerospace enterprises. On April 20, 2023, SpaceX's painstakingly developed next-generation heavy rocket, the Starship, exploded along with the spacecraft it carried, just 4 minutes after liftoff. Regarding this incident, Musk only wrote 2 sentences on Twitter: "Congratulations to my team for completing an exciting test launch. We'll learn a lot from the next test launch a few months later." Media even captured SpaceX's technical staff continuing to cheer after witnessing the rocket explosion because the launch pad remained undamaged, achieving the basic objective. SpaceX's new round of financing plans didn't stop due to this. Apart from Musk's SpaceX, Bezos' Blue Origin has also found its place in the aerospace market. Blue Origin participated in ULA's rocket iteration project. It coupled its own developed engine and first-stage rocket with ULA's second stage, pushing it to the global commercial market, and also received overseas orders. Like SpaceX, Blue Origin's rockets adopted the fast and efficient development model and vertically integrated production processes. In specific domains, its rockets also had pricing advantages, creating differentiated competition with SpaceX. And NASA chose SpaceX and Blue Origin for the launch services for America's next-generation lunar plans, undeniably confirming the technical prowess and commercial prospects of private aerospace enterprises. Alright, that's it for the main content of Fernholz's Rocket Billionaires. The rise of Musk and Bezos in the high-tech field of aerospace in the United States. However, the success of SpaceX and Blue Origin. In 2022 alone, around 10 private aerospace companies successfully launched their rockets, entering the global commercial space market competition. In the foreseeable future, this thriving market will see even more new players. Looking beyond the aerospace industry, we can learn many business management and operational strategies from the stories of these 2 rocket billionaires. Musk's rockets have established a pricing advantage based on efficient cost control. This focus on the input-output ratio and development cycle is something every company, especially startups, will need. SpaceX's emphasis on productization is also worth emulating. In internal discussions and decision-making, we often pride ourselves on 1 or 2 good ideas but overlook the difficulty of transforming mere creativity into tangible products. Musk's example tells us that sometimes, we need to step back from our biases and calmly assess the steps needed to turn ideas into products and the obstacles therein. That's true objectivity. Moreover, Musk's approach to rocket launch failures is equally enlightening. Often, failure brings strong emotional impacts, blinding us to the progress we've made and leading to self-doubt. Yet, Musk saw his shining points amid repeated failures, encouraging himself to learn lessons and move forward. The New York Times had a great comment on SpaceX: fail fast, but learn faster. This is a golden nugget for us regular folks to draw inspiration from. That wraps up the essence of this book. Congratulations on finishing another book. Thank you all for your support and attention. Please subscribe to the Tim Booker channel, like, and share this valuable knowledge with friends. Let's combine wisdom and practice, achieve our financial goals, and create a better future together. Thank you all, goodbye.